Salik out here with another edition of WFAN Daily, and it is my honor to talk to one of the two guys. You know, Coach, in my life as a sports fan, the teams that I have rooted for have only delivered two championships. One would be the 1986 Mets. The other would be the 1994 New York Rangers. Mike Keenan here with us promoting a reunion here. 94 Stanley Cup champion Rangers. Messier is going to be there. Leach, Richter, Graves, Matteau, Keenan, of course. Woodbridge Brewery, 33 Main Street in Woodbridge, New Jersey, this Saturday, September 21st. Visit halloffamesignings.com or cxstuff.com for details to purchase tickets. How often, Mike, do you get approached or talked to about 1994?
Well, actually, quite often, a historical victory, obviously, for the New York Rangers, a very popular team as time passes. Another 30 years now, and that's like waking up and having your son or daughter turn 30 and say, where did that time go? So, yeah, it's been sort of a topic of discussion in all the circles that I travel in terms of hockey circles and sports circles. They've always asked me questions about the 94 championship team.
30 years. Hard to believe that it's been 30 years. Do you keep in touch with any of the players from that team often on a regular basis?
Yes, I do. I'm also coming out with a book October 1st, and we'll launch it in Toronto October 1st and actually in New York area in the 2nd and 3rd. But Mark Messier did the foreword on the book, and I just had an opportunity to spend some time with Glenn Anderson and Craig McTavish. So from time to time, I see Matteau at charity events and others. Going back to other Rangers, Ron Duguay and I see each other quite often as well. So there's a Ranger connection, certainly, and I've had an opportunity to stay in touch with some of our players over time. When I coached in Russia, I'd always run into Zubov and Kovalev and Nemchinov. So around the world, the New York Rangers Stanley Cup championship team of 1994 is well known.
Yeah, and of course, certainly here in New York. And I can't wait for that book, by the way. We got to get you in studio here on WFAN to promote that book when it comes out. Can't wait to read it. So we had Messier on during the course of the Rangers postseason run this year. And, we talked about the 94 team and all that stuff. And he talked about your demeanor and your speech in Game 7, ahead of Game 7. Can you get, and he said basically it brought him to tears, and he was almost getting choked up talking about it with us. Can you give us a little insight into what you said and why you had that tenor or demeanor toward that team at that particular time ahead of Game 7?
Well, I think it was a result of what we had accomplished. And then, of course, the expectations of us winning the Cup became so intense. I thought that we needed to diffuse that a little bit. And the essence of that conversation was that we started this journey. We went to England as a group as a team to play some preseason games there and come back through training camp. And our objective from the very first meeting with the group or the team was set on winning the Stanley Cup. And basically, those expectations got escalated when we won the President's Trophy. And of course, now we're going into Game 7 for the Cup. And I discussed with them and brought it full circle that, if somebody said to us at the beginning of the year in September, we'd have a chance to play Game 7 in Madison Square Gardens, would you take it? And of course, all of us would say yes. But they needed to have the sense of what they have accomplished so far, even without playing Game 7 yet. That was incredible, and that they've had an incredible year, and they should be very proud of themselves. And we've got one last goal to accomplish, and we're going to do that when we play Game 7 in Madison Square Gardens against the Vancouver Canucks.
What do you think was more pressurized? Was it Game 7 against the Devils to get to the Cup final, or Game 7? Because it almost feels like, just hearing you talk about it, like, hey, we're here. Like, that's it. All the work, we're here. This is it. One game to go. Whereas with the Devils, you weren't there yet. Where was the more pressure in Game 7, Devils or Canucks?
I think it was equal. Certainly, to get to that final stage, that final step of winning one more game to win the Cup. As I said, we tried to, or I tried to diffuse that pressure, and of course, there was probably more pressure in Game 6 and Game 7 with Jersey because it was a must-win. That was the first time we were facing elimination, and of course, Mark had a spectacular game as well as the team, and Mike Richter stood on his head in the first period for us to be able to come back and win that game. But that series in itself was intense, and the close rivalry with New Jersey brought a real huge focus on the community between the two teams being rivals and being so close, and the intensity and the way that series was played as well. I go back and I haven't watched it for years now, but the hockey was hard hockey, really physically intense and deliberate and dramatic. So I think that the hurdles that we had to overcome were huge, and as you can see, it's a tough trophy to win, and in particular in New York City, where the pressure cooker gets turned up, the volume gets turned up. But as Mark said, and the rest of the team stepped up, said, we've got the bar where we want it. Let's just step over it and win this thing.
One of my favorite things about that team was, or about that year, obviously the wins are great and the result was great, but the way you built the team, especially at the deadline, bringing in all these different veterans, experienced guys, some tough guys, grit guys, trading skilled players away to get these guys in. How much of your influence was at that deadline as opposed to Neil Smith?
Well, Neil and I had some great discussions, and Neil was a little bit hesitant to be able to, and to his credit, he made the trades that we asked for, but he said that, we're in first place and we have a team that has proved to be successful. But I said, Neil, I've just had the experience of being in Philadelphia twice for the Cup, in Chicago for the Cup, and I can tell you this team is not built well enough or heavy enough or physical enough to win the Cup. We've got to make some changes. We have to have people with experience that can deal with the pressures of New York City and the expectations of winning the Cup. And that was a tough conversation that we had, but to his credit, he was able to go after the players. We identified the players that we wanted. I had Matteau and Noonan in Chicago for the run, and I had them for many years, so they knew what it would take. There was the discussion about, that late change would disrupt the chemistry of the team. I said that I don't believe it will, because I know these players. Anderson I had in Canada Cup, and Coach Glenn there, so he knew me. Those Matteau and Noonan knew me. Craig McTavish, I coached against him twice when I coached the Philadelphia Flyers for the Stanley Cup. So those players knew my personality. They knew the expectations I would have of them. And at the same time, the players we had in the locker room were familiar with them. So Mark playing with them and the rest of the Oilers, Gravy, Asatikanen, Bukaboom, Kevin Lowe, it was seamless. It was like, okay, the next day we still had a team of great chemistry, but also a bigger, more physical, more experienced team that was going to be absolutely necessary to beat Jersey. The Jersey had a big physical team and a deep team, and as it turned out, if you watched that final series against Vancouver, it was extremely vicious, physical hockey, and we needed that aspect to be able to win.
Did you try to trade for Chris Chelios? I mean, obviously, yeah, I know you loved him with Chicago and good defense, and Leach. I'll get into those issues in a second. But is there truth to that you tried to trade for Chris Chelios, or tried to get to Neil Smith to trade for Chris Chelios?
We might have had that discussion, but as it turned out, that was an unrealistic expectation. So there wasn't much discussion about it.
Okay, so what happened with Leach, Coach? Because I don't know. I talked to Brian actually the other day. It seems that you guys have a good relationship now, but even Messier, when we talked to him, you were hard on Leach. And, he's one of the great Rangers of all time. I know he eventually was traded away, has his number up there, did deliver the Stanley Cup. But prior to that, you were hard on him. What was your relationship with Brian Leach then? And why does it seem like it wasn't, cohesive between you two?
Well, I first of all, we have a great relationship and a lot of respect for each other. But Brian was an exceptional talent, as you know, and I tried to shape him with the rest of the team into playing a certain style in a certain way. And he had his own way of playing and had his own habits, as they all did and do. And we had to change some of those habits, at least in my opinion. So that became a challenge for us, but we were able to get that change. And once we had that conversation, I never had to talk to Brian again about how we were going to play. He conformed with the rest of the group, and Mess intervened a little bit, but because they were great friends and great buddies and great teammates. But just from the experience that I had in winning or going to the Cup final, and what Mark had experienced the Cup victories, it was something new for Brian. The New York Rangers had never competed before then for the Stanley Cup with the system that we wanted to play. So that was basically the adaptation of all the teammates, not just Brian, that the ones that had not been to the finals before, had not won a cup, had to understand and learn what it would take to get to that position to put us in a situation where we could succeed.
I feel like now, after talking to you about it and talking to Leach about it and talking to Messier about it and reading about it and learning about it, from my perspective, it seems like your hard coaching, which eventually led to the Rangers winning a Stanley Cup, may have not been for everybody. And in this particular case, maybe Leach didn't take to it and took it to heart. And maybe that caused a little bit of friction where you were just trying to maximize, right or wrong, just trying to maximize his potential and get him to a Stanley Cup champion level.
Well, I think that's correct. And I think Mark understood. And Mark and I had a lot of discussions about the team behind closed doors, just the two of us. And he was very instrumental in delivering those messages. And that's what his leadership brought to the team, his experience and his friendship with Brian, for example, and others, that made it possible for us to, and you just use the word, maximize our abilities as a group. The synergism of the group had to be put in place, and to win any championship, you have to have great leadership amongst the players and expectations that will drive the group and the demands that you put on the group. Right from day one, our first meeting, I can still remember Mark coming to tears, and Mark was a very emotional leader. And I asked him why, and he says, because since I've been here, nobody's talked about winning the cup. They talked about competing and playing, but not to win the cup. And from day one, that's what we served up. We said we're here for one reason, and that is to win the Stanley Cup. From the very first meeting I had with them, I don't know if anyone has spoken about it to you, but I had to go in the archives and find a parade, a championship parade in New York, but it wasn't a hockey team. It was the New York Yankees. I had to show the championship team in New York to our players, and I did it in the first meeting because there was no hockey history to be able to show them what that would mean to the city and to the players themselves.
And now you have coaches referencing your team that did actually do it, and they better be actually showing the tape of that parade. Coach, a couple more before we let you go, and we really do appreciate your time and can't wait for this reunion that's taking place Saturday, Woodbridge Brewery, 33 Main Street in Woodbridge, New Jersey. Hall of Fame signings.com, cxstuff.com, 94 Rangers reunion is going to be great. A coach like yourself, who, and I know it's different now, the way sports have evolved and players are softer and they don't want to be coached hard, but a coach that gives everything he can like you did and toughen these guys up and not be their best friends, but really try to get the most out of them and doing it in a hard way. Was there ever a point that after you won where you let down and maybe told some of the players that you loved them or just showed a different, softer side? Was that ever there, or because you were still in the thick of coaching, you didn't do that?
I think they understood that. I had teams in Philadelphia and Chicago that embraced the coaching philosophy, if you like, or the expectations that I placed upon them. It's not easy to be a champion, and it's not easy to win, as is illustrated now 30 years later. It's tough to win, particularly the Stanley Cup. And through the experiences that I had to learn myself about losing in Philly, losing in Chicago, and then being surrounded with some winners like Mark and the fellows that had won in Edmonton, it takes a special group of players to come together and to be able to succeed and drive that message home. I think since then they've come to understand, and over time they did understand it a little bit, but they understand even more over time how difficult a task it was.
So as much as I loved you, Coach, for delivering the Stanley Cup, now I was only 14. I didn't really endure the pain. It's been 30 freaking years. You know, yeah. Sam said at the time, this one will last a lifetime. It might have to. It's been too long here. But as much as I love that 94 season, I could not believe, my heart was broken with how it ended. Obviously getting traded for Nedved, losing a Stanley Cup coach. Any regrets there? What happened with the end of your Rangers head coaching tenure after winning the Cup?
Well, I'm going to give you a book tease then. And that is, you can read the book and you'll find out. Yep. I was very unhappy about how things evolved or unfolded. The team, the fellow that really was instrumental in the beginning was Stanley Jaffe, who was the president, our chairman of Paramount, and Paramount was sold. There was something to Redstone, Viacom, and they fired Stanley, and the thing unfolded from there. The minute they sold the team and fired Stanley, I said, I'm not going to last here, because I needed his support amongst in the situation. And I still am disappointed that I end up having to leave New York City, and I think that that will be expressed and has been expressed in the book that is going to be coming out soon.
Look forward to the book, and understand, save some of the details for that. Can't wait, and we'd love to talk to you again. So it has nothing to do with, just to be clear, because a part of me thought this, ignorantly so, but just like, oh, well, he won the Stanley Cup here. How, he accomplished the mission. Like, that's it. Where can you go from there? It had nothing to do with that you already won and you felt like couldn't do any more in New York?
No, not at all. In fact, I was my thinking was, if we can come back and win it again, we can repeat with this group, because we assembled the group late, as we just discussed in this interview, with the addition of the players like Matold, Noonan, McTavish, Anderson coming over late, that we had put ourselves in a position that we could repeat. And then the strike came, and then the fallout after the victory. So it was very disappointing, to tell you the truth, at the time, and still is. It's something I've had to deal with throughout my career, but I definitely did not want to leave New York.
And I know no Ranger fan wanted you to leave either. And then, it happened with the Knicks, with Riley going to Miami, and Rangers losing, Rangers fans losing you after winning the Stanley Cup. It was, hey, look, at least we'll always have the cup, right, Coach? 94, we have the cup, but you always think of what could have been. Last one quickly on that. Neil Smith, how's your relationship with Neil Smith? You guys still talk?
I don't see Neil very often, and from time to time it's cordial, but I was disappointed in what Neil, how he handled the situation, and I still am, but life is not always fair, so you deal with it and move on. But Pat Riley and I have had a few discussions as well about the situation in New York, and in fact, he and I shared an office in Madison Square Gardens, and he invited me to some of his because I was now coaching in Florida, and some of his basketball games. So it'll be interesting read for our audience when my book comes out.
Yeah, I'm fascinated about that, and I will just say, Coach, to wrap this thing up here, I've always loved you. I've always loved Riley. I know that nobody's perfect. No situation is perfect. But the way that both of you guys left, it was painted as you guys were the villains. Riley left. He's a rat. Keenan didn't want any part of New York. But the way that you just kind of teased the book and talking about it with Riley, it wasn't like you guys getting the blame. Maybe there was more to it as far as the Garden goes and the way that things were being run, as opposed to you guys running from us in New York.
I think that's a very accurate statement. And Pat and I have had that discussion. And interesting enough, Bob Kukowski, who was the president at the time, has come out with a book recently. And Bob called me before the book came out and had a discussion with me about what he's going to put in the book. So that would be an interesting read for your audience as well.
Yeah, I want names, Coach. I don't care if it's 30 years later. I'm still pissed off. Riley out of here. You're out of here. I wanted more wins. What are you kidding me? I can't wait for the book. Hey, promise me this. If you're in New York, come by. We'll have you on the radio show in studio, promote the book, and we'll talk some Rangers and all those memories.
I definitely, we're going to be in New York October, again, after this, October 2nd and 3rd.
Okay. So when's the book coming out? When's the book coming out?
It's going to be, I think, hit the market on October 1st.
This October?
Yes.
Oh, Coach Keenan, we don't have to wait that long. This is great. When you're in town, come by. We'll have you on the fan, and we'll talk some hockey, and I can't wait to read that book. Thank you so much for your time, Coach.
I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, no problem. Thank you so much. Enjoy the reunion.